Welcome back. So in this lecture we're going to discuss the receiver operator characteristic curve, or ROC curve. By the end of this lecture you should be able to describe the ROC curve as well as this measurement called area under the curve. So let's look at a machine learning model. Let's talk about random forest because it's pretty easy to understand with the random forest model why we would want to take a look at a ROC curve. You may recall that in a random forest model, it's an ensemble method that uses a whole bunch of decision trees, and it concludes the target class by having each tree vote. And we can normalize that vote in what's called a confidence score, as seen below. We had 0 trees vote for class 0, 7 vote for class 1, which gave us a confidence of 0.7, and 3 vote for class number 2, which gave us a confidence of 0.3. Now recall that a confidence score is not a probability, so we can't treat it as such. So it's maybe not necessarily true where you have to have a confidence level greater than 0.5. And you could just as easily imagine that there could be a case where, let's say, class 0 had a confidence of 0.3, class 1 had a confidence of 0.4, and class 2 had a confidence of 0.3. Class 1 would clearly be the preferable class, but now everything is much closer and none of the confidence scores would exceed 0.5, so you can't use this probabilistic intuition, which of course, as I mentioned, is also a false way to interpret it. So with that in mind, how do we go about picking a confidence value? So again, they're not probabilistic, so 0.5 may or may not be a good choice. Now, one little nuance here is we may want to pick a higher confidence value if we're optimizing for precision. So if it's really important that we have a lot of a high resolution on what we're trying to predict. So let's say we're trying to predict a stock that's going to increase in value a lot. We don't need to pick all the stocks that are going to increase in value, just a small number that we're really, really sure about. In that case, we're optimizing for precision, and we would want a higher confidence value. Now, think of a different case where maybe we're looking at medical diagnosis. And in that case, it's okay if we have a false positive saying that a patient has cancer, because then we examine that patient further. But we don't want to rule out cancer if the patient actually has it. So in that case, we want to optimize for recall, and maybe we'd want a lower confidence value. The other interesting thing is if you're in a multi-class classification problem, such as what we saw with that random forest model, you may even want to have a different confidence value for each class. The model may behave differently across classes, and so it might make sense where you would want a different confidence value. Also, it may be the case that some classes you want to optimize for precision, while others you'd want to optimize for recall. And so there'd be different domain-specific considerations in that case. So let's take a look at a sample problem. So let's say we have a single class with just 50 positive and 50 negative samples in the ground truth. And so now let's just examine 11 different confidence values in this notional experiment. So here we see in our notional example, we see 11 different confidence values, and we see the associated true positives and false positives with each. So if we have a confidence value of 0 as our threshold, we're accepting everything. So all 50 true positives got classified, but we also classified all 50 false positives as the target class. Now as the confidence level increased, the model classified less items. So both true positives and false positives drop. Now let us look at the associated precision. So the precision in general is going up as you increase the confidence threshold. Meanwhile, the recall generally will go down. Now, these are not, very hard and fast rules, and they're not theoretically based. You see in this simple example alone, there is some variance where it does go up and down a little bit for both. However, with that in mind, if you see like extreme variance in precision and recall based on the confidence value, that might be a little bit of a red flag in that maybe there's some implementation error or there's some issue with how you're generating your features and so forth. So let's look at the F1 score. Now, looking at F1, we see in this example that it's, for the most part, it's kind of tightly bound between, like, say, 0.5 and 0.65 or so. And that makes it very difficult just by looking at F1 to pick where that best trade-off is. And so the receiver operator characteristic curve gives us a nice visualization and to help us understand the best confidence threshold. So here's how you go. Here's a little bit about it. It's a tool for helping us understand the trade-off between true positives and false positives. And we also can use this measure called area under the curve. That's simply the integral of it. Because if we want to compare two different modeling approaches for the same problem, same threshold value in two different approaches, we can use this single metric to understand which one is better across all confidence thresholds. And the reason you might want to use area under the curve as a measurement as opposed to something like just precision or recall, from a practical standpoint, you may want to leave it to the user to make their own decisions on trade-offs between true positives and false positives. Also, area under the curve is less sensitive to things like class imbalance as well. So let's look at two measurements that we need to have in order to create the ROC curve. So the first is true positive rate. And this is simply the ratio of the true positives to all of the positives in the data set for that class. So we could think of this as true positives over the sum of the true positives and false negatives. False negatives being positive samples that the model has missed. Meanwhile, the false positive rate is simply the ratio of false positives to all the negatives in that class. So we can think of that as the number of false positives divided by the sum of the false positives and the true negatives. So going back to our example, here are those numbers calculated out. And let's look at how we plot this. Now the thing is, when we plot this, we are not actually plotting the confidence values on the chart. The chart is simply looking at the false positives and true positives. False positives are on the x-axis and the true positives go on the y. So we can measure the true positive rate based on a certain acceptance of a level of false positives. So here's how it looks. Now it's often useful to put a line with a slope of 1 on the same graph because that gives us an intuition as are we doing better or worse than a random baseline. And we see in the case of this notional experiment, it's doing slightly better. We have a little bit in some of the lower values of false positive rate. We're seeing the most gain over just kind of guessing. And ideally, we probably would look at values over here, confidence level specified by those 2 points, as being more ideal of what we'd want in terms of a trade-off between true and false positives. But in reality, this is not the best result. We probably want to see the curve go more that way, go up and to the left as you look at it. Now, of course, a measure for this is the area under the curve, as we've mentioned, and that can be easily computed with pretty much any statistical or machine learning tool that's out there. Scikit-learn has it, R has it, many others do. And here the area under the curve is 0.586, which is about what you'd expect because the area under the curve for that line with the slope of 1 is going to be 0.5. And this has that little space in red that's giving us just a little bit more. So let's look at a second example. Now here right away we see, just looking at the true positive rate and false positive rate, we get the feeling that, hey, this is probably going to do a bit better. And let's see what the plot looks like. The yellow line being the second model. On the same data, this was a different true and false positive rate. Now obviously this is doing much better because it's giving us this behavior of, going more toward the 1 or the 0, 1 point on the graph. And we see a couple of nice candidates here for sort of the optimum trade-off between true positives and false positives. And looking at the area under the curve for the red line, 0.586, and for the yellow line, 0.802. Which makes sense because even just visually looking at it, you could probably guess, yeah, that's going to be somewhere in the neighborhood of 80%. It seems like this area outside of the yellow curve gives you about 20% of that graph paper. So thank you again for tuning in. Stay in touch for more content.